My name is Mara Ellison, 25 years old. They picked my birthday because it sounded like love. Drinks at the cozy bar with the brick wall and the string lights, and the piano that never stayed in tune. Mom wore pearls and touched them like a worry stone. Dad smiled at the table, but his eyes stayed on the door. My sister kept her phone under her napkin, thumbs moving like minnows in shallow water. I told myself it was a surprise plan. I told myself families are awkward when they care. When the waiter set down my cake slice and someone murmured, "Make a wish," all three of them stood at once. "Bathroom," they said. "Back in a minute." I laughed, a little confused. The candles flickered. The room hummed with low conversation and glass against glass. That was when a woman I did not know slid into the empty chair across from me, close enough for the scent of rain in her coat to reach me. She took my hand as if we had rehearsed it and whispered without moving her mouth, "Do not believe them. Do not sign anything." Then she was up, gone, absorbed by the crowd like a bead of ink in water. My heart stuttered against my ribs. I turned in a slow circle on my stool. She was gone. My family reappeared 15 minutes later, cheerful like people in a commercial. Mom kissed my hair and said perfect. Dad rested a heavy envelope on the table. My sister held my wrist in a way that looked friendly. The piano tried to find a melody and missed. Dad said paperwork like it was a warm word. "Your grandmother's trust," he explained. "You turned 25 today. That means access, but there are formalities." He slid the envelope toward me. The flap was already unsealed. I remembered my grandmother's kitchen and her rule about recipes. Read it all before you start, even the boring parts. Especially the boring parts. I pulled the document out and skimmed the first page, then the second. Legal language stacked like bricks. Transfer of beneficiary rights upon signature. My eyes caught on the phrase and locked there. Transfer, not access. "This says I am transferring the rights," I said slowly, "not receiving them." Silence fell the way a curtain falls. Mom laughed thinly. "That is just how attorneys write. Trust us." She fiddled with her necklace again, and the pearls clicked softly like teeth. "Then why not tell me the amount?" My voice was measured and even, and did not match my pulse. Dad's jaw went tight. 700,000. But there are conditions. Fees. Taxes. It is complicated. Sign first. We will explain. My sister tapped the page with a French manicured finger. The line was highlighted in yellow. "Just here," she said. "We already spoke to the lawyer. This is the only way to keep it safe." "What is yours is ours," Mom added, and smiled as if she had said something tender. "If it is mine, why are you more excited than I am?" The question slipped out before I could soften it. That was when I noticed the brochures tucked under Mom's purse. Luxury retirement communities with fountains on their covers. I saw Dad's new car key on the table, heavy in chrome. I saw my sister's engagement ring glinting under the napkin like a secret. "You were going to use my inheritance," I said. "That is why I need to sign." "It is not like that," Mom whispered. "It is family," Dad snapped. "You think we have not done enough for you, after everything." I flipped to the back, hands steady now. The pages shook anyway. Page 7 had a signature line. My name was already there in a neat hand that looked like mine, if you did not know how I make the letter A like a pointed roof. The wrong A stared up at me. My phone vibrated with a number I did not recognize. A text popped onto the lock screen. "They are watching. Trust no one in your family. Meet me at the address inside the envelope. Come alone. Bring the contract." My throat closed. I looked up. Dad was on his phone now, thumbs moving. Mom's eyes had gone glassy. My sister raised her chin and said, "You are being ungrateful." I slid the document back into the envelope and stood. "I am taking this to a real lawyer," I said. My sister blocked me with her chair. "You do not understand how much we need this," she hissed. "Dad is in debt. Mom's medical bills. My wedding. We were counting on you." "You were counting on me not to read," I said. Across the room, the waitress lit another candle at a different table. For a second, the flame brightened, and I saw a figure at the bar watching us. The woman from before. When our eyes met, she tilted her head toward the door. I shoved past the chairs and stepped into the November cold. Air hit my cheeks like a slap and made every nerve feel newly invented. I walked fast until the adrenaline made me run. At the end of the block, I ducked into a diner with a neon coffee cup in the window and slid into the last booth. The waitress asked if I was all right. I said yes, because the real answer would have cracked the room. I laid the contract on the table and read it the way Grandma taught me to read recipes. Slowly. Every line. transfer of beneficiary rights, assumption of fiduciary responsibility, authorization to liquidate assets, legal liability for past distributions. If I signed, I would become the person responsible for whatever they had already taken, the fall guy wearing my face. The coffee arrived, and I held the mug in both hands until they stopped shaking. 17 missed calls, 6 voicemails. My sister wrote, "I cannot believe you are doing this to us." My mother wrote, "We know where you live. Come home, and we will forget this happened." I turned the phone off and set it face down. I thought of my grandmother's voice, the way she would check the oven light and narrate her thinking, the way she would say, "Do not skip steps, even if you are hungry." I thought of the woman at the bar and the way her warning felt like a chord struck inside a piano somewhere behind my ribs. I thought of the way Mom touched her pearls until the string might break. I pulled the envelope toward me and reached inside. Something small and cold slid into my palm, a single brass key taped to a scrap of paper with an address in block letters. 2847 Riverside Drive, 4B. My name written beneath it in a hand I did not recognize. Outside, a bus sighed and a siren drifted past, like a memory of a sound. The steam from my coffee cupped my face like a hope. I tucked the contract back into the envelope, slipped the key into my pocket, and stood. On my way out, I paused at the door and looked at my reflection in the glass. I did not look like a traitor or a thief. I looked like a person who had finally read to the end of the page. I pushed into the cold, and the street swallowed me whole. The cab's heater barely worked, so I pressed my hands against my coat sleeves for warmth and watched the city slide past like a film on fast forward. The closer we got to Riverside Drive, the quieter everything became. No sirens, no laughter spilling from bars, just the hum of tires on wet asphalt. When the cab stopped, I hesitated. The building looked ordinary, brick and green awning, but I could feel something coiled behind its windows. I paid the driver and stepped out. The air smelled like iron and rain. Inside, the lobby was washed out fluorescent, the carpet worn thin in the middle. A corkboard near the mailboxes held flyers for lost cats and piano lessons. I climbed to the 4th floor. No elevator. Every creak in the stairwell sounded amplified, too aware of itself. Apartment 4B waited at the end of a narrow hall. I tried the key. It worked. The light switch clicked, and the world changed. Every wall was covered. Newspaper clippings, photocopies, handwritten notes connected by red string in looping webs, names, dates, account numbers, a dozen faces printed from ID photos and social media posts. The air was thick with paper dust and old coffee. I stood in the middle of it all and turned slowly. On the left, financial documents, trust ledgers, withdrawal dates going back 15 years. On the right, a family tree drawn in ink. At the center, a photograph of my grandmother, younger than I'd ever seen her, standing between 2 girls, my mother and another girl with darker hair. The one they never talked about. A voice behind me said quietly, "She was beautiful, wasn't she?" I spun. The woman from the bar stood in the doorway, hair damp from the rain, eyes alert but soft. "You followed me," I said. "I led you," she corrected. "My name's Vivian, your aunt." I couldn't speak for a full heartbeat. "That's impossible. They said you—" "Died, I know." She stepped fully inside and locked the door. It made the story cleaner. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Why did you tell me not to sign?" She motioned toward the documents. "Because that's what I did once. I signed. 15 years ago. I thought I was accessing what Mom left for me. I was actually transferring it. Your parents used my signature to empty half the trust. When I started asking questions, they forged paperwork to make it look like I'd been paid out and moved away. Then the checks to my address started bouncing. When I pushed harder, they paid people to make me disappear. Not kill me, just erase me." I looked again at the picture of my grandmother. Why not go to the police? I did, 3 times. The files vanished. A detective who believed me was transferred the next week. Money moves faster than truth. She walked to a section of the wall marked medical. Then Mom died. I joined her, reading the 2 documents pinned side by side. One was an official death certificate, cause of death, cardiac arrest. The other was an autopsy report from a different doctor. Cause, digitalis overdose. Manner, undetermined. "They poisoned her," I whispered. Vivian nodded once. Digitalis is a heart medication. Too much stops it completely. They said she mixed up her dosage. But look at the note in the margin. She pointed to a scribbled line. Requested talk screen, withdrawn by family. I felt dizzy. My parents. Yes. Her voice was flat. They convinced the investigator she was senile, making financial mistakes. They got her declared mentally unfit, then amended the trust. Your mother became sole trustee, your father her manager. I've been documenting every withdrawal since. I stared at the ledgers. The amount started small. 2,000, 5. Then the numbers jumped. 50, 70, 90,000. Each one dated around something personal. My sister's engagement, Dad's new car, Mom's elective surgery. How much is left? I asked. About 200,000 out of more than $1 million. I sank onto a chair, the edges of my vision pulsing, and now they want me to sign so they can blame it on me. Vivian's expression softened. You're the only one who can stop them. You're the beneficiary now. You have legal standing. I can't touch the trust without you. She handed me a folder. Inside is a name, Patricia Okonkwo, lawyer. She's been waiting years for a case like this. If you're willing, we can file to freeze the trust, gather every record, force it into the light. I looked at the forged signature on page 7 again. The wrong A. They'll destroy me if I try. They'll try anyway, Vivian said quietly. That's how people like them survive. By convincing you, the truth will cost more than the lie. I studied her face, searching for the girl in the old photo. Same eyes, same determined mouth. Why now? Why tell me tonight? Because you turned 25. The clock started ticking. Once the paperwork clears, they'll move the rest offshore. If you'd signed, it would have looked like you did it yourself. My hands were trembling. What happens if we win? We don't win, she said. We make the record right. That's all I've ever wanted. Rain started tapping against the windows. Vivian switched off the overhead light and turned on a small lamp. The room's shadows shifted, softer now. You need to rest, she said. Tomorrow we'll meet Patricia. She'll know what to do. I wanted to argue, to ask 100 more questions, but exhaustion hit like gravity. I sat on the couch, the paper walls watching. Vivian, I murmured, eyes already closing. Do you think Grandma knew what they were planning? Vivian's voice came from somewhere near the window. She suspected. That's why she changed the trust to protect you. Did they kill her for it? The silence that followed was answer enough. I slept under the hum of the city and the whisper of paper in the dark. For the first time, I understood what inheritance really meant. Not money, but the things we're left to uncover when love is gone. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of light that makes you doubt the sun is still there. My neck ached from sleeping on the couch. When I sat up, Vivian was already at her desk sorting through stacks of folders. Her movements were calm but sharp, someone who'd lived too long in survival mode. Coffee's in the kitchen, she said without looking up. We've got a long day ahead. The aroma hit me before the bitterness did. I poured a cup, sat opposite her, and tried to steady my breath. You sure you want to go through with this? She asked. Once we file, there's no turning back. They'll know you're fighting. I nodded. They already know. They just don't know how much I've seen. She gave me a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good. You'll need that steel. We spent the next few hours reviewing everything. Bank statements, scanned documents, old emails Vivian had archived like trophies of deceit. She showed me how the withdrawals lined up perfectly with family milestones. Here, she said, pointing at one printout. Your mom's medical retreat, 20,000. Your sister's engagement party, 35. Your dad's so-called business investment, 80. I stared at the pattern. They didn't even try to hide it. They thought no one ever would look. At 1:00, we split a cab. Vivian insisted we take separate ones in case we were followed. Paranoia, she said, is what kept me alive. The law firm was downtown, a tall glass tower with a river view that screamed legitimacy. Patricia Okonkwo, as it turned out, was exactly the kind of person you'd trust with your life. Tall, poised, deliberate. Her office was minimalist except for one framed quote behind her desk. The truth doesn't need defending, only revealing. She shook my hand firmly. Vivian's told me a lot about you, Mara. Sit down. I passed her the envelope and the contract. She read each page slowly, eyes narrowing. Every few lines, she made a small note in the margin. Finally, she looked up. This is one of the crudest trust fraud attempts I've ever seen, she said. They forged your signature, falsified the witnessing, and included clauses that make you financially responsible for 15 years of theft. It's practically a confession. What do we do? I asked. We freeze the trust today. I'll file an emergency petition in probate court to block any transactions. Once the freeze is granted, we'll escalate to federal level: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft. Vivian leaned back, arms crossed. We've got the autopsy too, the poisoning. Patricia nodded. We'll include that as supporting evidence. It establishes motive, but the criminal side will take time. We focus first on the money trail. Her voice was steady, factual, but the weight of it settled in my chest like a stone. Patricia glanced between us. I need to prepare you for what's coming. They'll smear you, claim Vivian manipulated you, say you're unstable or greedy. It's their best defense, turn you into the villain. I swallowed hard. Then we give them nowhere to hide. She smiled faintly. Good answer. We signed papers, copies of copies. My hand shook as I wrote my name, real and deliberate this time. It felt different to sign something for myself. By the time we left the office, the sky had darkened to slate. Vivian hailed a cab. They'll come after you now, she warned. You'll need to stay off social media, maybe move for a while. I'll be fine. No, you won't, she said softly, but you'll survive. That night, I slept little. My phone buzzed endlessly. Unknown numbers, blocked calls, voicemails I didn't listen to. The next morning, Patricia called. The judge approved it, she said. The trust is frozen. Your parents can't touch a cent. For a moment, I couldn't speak. What happens next? We go public enough that they can't make this disappear. Law enforcement will contact you soon. She was right. By week's end, 2 agents from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division sat across from me at Vivian's kitchen table, recording everything I said. I handed them flash drives of bank statements, the forged contract, the autopsy report. When they left, Vivian poured herself a whiskey and offered me one. I refused. What if they fight back? I asked. They will, she said simply, and they'll make it ugly. She wasn't wrong. 3 days later, my sister showed up at my office. I worked in a small design firm where the biggest scandal we'd had until then was someone stealing lunches from the fridge. She burst through the door, eyes wild. How can you do this to us? She shouted, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. We're your family. Security escorted her out before I could answer. My hands were still shaking when my boss came over. Take the day off, Mara, he said gently. Sort this out. I never went back. That evening, Patricia called again. Their lawyer reached out. They want to settle. Return some money if you drop the criminal charges. I laughed, a sound that didn't feel like mine. Tell them no. Already did. News traveled fast. Within a week, whispers turned into headlines. Granddaughter alleges 1.3 M. Trust fraud. No names yet, but enough clues that friends started messaging, co-workers asking questions. Some called me brave. Others called me greedy. Vivian told me to stop reading. People will always pick a side that makes them comfortable. Don't give them that power. Still, the comments found their way into my dreams. Ungrateful child. She's destroying her parents over money. Probably lying for attention. I deleted everything. Socials, photos, even my LinkedIn. My world shrank to Vivian's apartment, Patricia's office, and the courthouse hallways that smelled like old paper and disinfectant. The preliminary hearing came fast. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined, but the tension was large enough to breathe. My parents sat at the defense table, my sister behind them. My father didn't look at me. My mother's eyes were swollen but dry. Their lawyer painted me as unstable, desperate for drama, claimed Vivian had brainwashed me. Family disputes are messy, he told the judge. This is grief turned into vengeance. Patricia rose slowly. Her voice was calm, surgical. She projected the forged contract onto the screen, zoomed in on the signature. This A, she said, pointing. Notice the rounded top. Now compare it to my client's authentic signature on her tax return. Sharp point, distinct, different handwriting entirely. That is not a mistake. That is a crime. The room was silent, except for the hum of the projector. The judge leaned forward. Plenty of evidence here to proceed, she said. Motion to dismiss denied. My mother's breath hitched. My father's hand clenched into a fist. I could see the tremor in his knuckles. When it was over, I walked out into the corridor. Dad passed me without a glance. Mom paused, her voice trembling. We taught you to trust family. I met her eyes. No, I said. You taught me to read. Outside, reporters waited like vultures in the rain, their umbrellas forming a dark forest. I walked through them without answering a single question. Behind me, Vivian fell into step, silent. We didn't speak until we reached the car. Then she whispered, "You did good, kid." I stared out the window as the city blurred by, wondering if good was even the right word for what we'd just started. The trial didn't start right away. Justice rarely does. Months stretched into a year, motions, postponements, more filings than I thought could exist. Every time I thought we were close, another delay arrived, dressed up as due process. Patricia called it the long winter, and it felt exactly like that. My parents' lawyer was relentless, turning every hearing into a performance. They wanted the narrative to shift, to make me the villain, Vivian the manipulator, my grandmother, the confused old woman who simply made financial mistakes. The story they built was polished and grotesque, but the documents didn't lie. Each bank statement, each notarized page, each small inconsistency Vivian had cataloged over 15 years formed a chain that no excuse could break. Still, sitting in that courtroom day after day, I learned that the truth doesn't protect you from exhaustion. It just keeps you standing long enough to finish. By the time the official trial began, 2 full years after my 25th birthday, I felt like I'd aged 10. The courthouse was a gray monument to bureaucracy, the kind of building where history whispered in fluorescent light. Cameras flashed outside, reporters shouting questions I didn't answer. Patricia walked beside me, posture unshakable. Vivian followed just behind, her calm presence anchoring me. When the bailiff called the court to order, I looked across the aisle. My parents sat stiff and composed. My mother wore a pale blue suit that made her look fragile, almost saintly. My father avoided my eyes. My sister sat in the second row, jaw clenched, glaring like she wanted me to vanish. The prosecution laid out everything. The forged signature, the doctored trust documents, the altered death certificate, the transactions disguised as family reimbursements. They had experts, handwriting analysts, forensic accountants, even a toxicologist who confirmed that digitalis poisoning was plausible and had gone uninvestigated. Each witness built another brick in the wall that boxed my parents in. Vivian testified first. She told her story without embellishment, how she signed the document believing it was legitimate, how she discovered the theft, how she'd been erased. When she spoke about my grandmother, her voice cracked once, only once. The jury leaned forward. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, palms damp, heart beating a rhythm I could barely control. Patricia's nod was small but steady. "Ms. Ellison," the prosecutor began, "what happened the night of your 25th birthday?" I told them everything. The bar, the stranger's warning, the forged signature, the text message, the apartment full of evidence. My voice didn't shake until the part where I said, "They taught me that family means trust," and I trusted them. Patricia's questioning was precise, deliberate. The defense tried to tear me apart after that. Their lawyer suggested I'd been manipulated by Vivian, that I was driven by resentment, that I forged my own evidence to hurt my family. But when he projected the contract onto the screen and tried to call the forged signature similar, Patricia rose quietly and asked permission to show an exhibit. She placed a magnified image of my grandmother's will beside it. The original A's, sharp and distinct, matched mine perfectly. The forged one was round and heavy. "This isn't just handwriting," she said. "It's history, and history doesn't lie." The jury watched my parents then. My father's expression didn't change, but my mother's face crumpled. The trial dragged on for 6 weeks. I lost track of the days. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps every morning. Headlines bled across social feeds. Family fraud uncovered. Daughter testifies against parents. Some painted me as brave, others as cruel. I stopped reading altogether. When closing arguments came, Patricia stood at the center of the courtroom and said, "This case isn't about money. It's about betrayal disguised as love, about trust used as a weapon. The Ellisons didn't make a mistake. They made a plan." Then she sat down, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On the third afternoon, the bailiff announced they had a verdict. I thought my knees might give out walking back into the courtroom. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendants guilty on all counts." Time didn't stop, it just slowed, like the air itself thickened. My mother gasped softly. My father exhaled and lowered his head. I didn't move. I couldn't. The judge spoke next, her tone cold and clear. "You violated a sacred trust. You exploited your daughter, your own family, for greed. You are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison." 12 years. Vivian reached for my hand under the table. I didn't cry. I just felt empty, like a room after a storm. The civil trial came next. It was shorter, almost procedural. With the criminal convictions secure, the judge ruled in our favor. Restitution, damages, asset seizure. But there wasn't much left. Most of the money was gone. What remained was a fraction of what my grandmother had built, just over $400,000. Half to me, half to Vivian. When the hearing ended, reporters waited again. I ignored them, walking past microphones and cameras. Vivian followed, the court papers clutched against her chest. Outside, the sky was blue for the first time in months. We sat on the courthouse steps, silent. "It's over," I whispered. Vivian shook her head. "Not over, just accounted for." She meant it literally and metaphorically. The book's balanced now, but life rarely does. That night, we opened my grandmother's old recipe box, the one Vivian had kept all these years. Inside were yellowed cards in her handwriting. Cake, stew, casseroles. On one of them, faded ink spelled out, "Read every line, even the boring ones. Love, Mom." I traced the words with my finger. She knew. She always did, Vivian said. We toasted with cheap wine, sitting on her balcony, the city humming below. For the first time in years, the air felt clean. 2 years passed before life started to feel like it belonged to me again. The Ellison name didn't mean anything anymore. It was a headline once, a cautionary tale, a dinner table conversation in households I'd never visit. I stopped introducing myself that way the moment I could. I signed new documents as Mara Quinn, taking my grandmother's maiden name, the one that had built the trust, the one that hadn't been tainted. Vivian and I didn't celebrate. We just went to the courthouse together, signed the change, and walked out into sunlight. "Feels lighter already," she said. And it did. My parents were still serving their sentences. My sister had moved across the country, changed her number, her hair color, her life. Once, a mutual friend forwarded me a picture of her, smiling beside a man and a baby, somewhere coastal. I stared at it longer than I should have, then deleted it. I didn't hate her. I didn't forgive her either. She'd chosen survival her way. I'd chosen mine. Vivian and I kept rebuilding. The trust funds were liquidated, the debts cleared, and what little remained went into something new. The Eleanor Foundation, a scholarship for young women studying education. Grandma's passion, reborn clean. "We'll make the money honest again," Vivian said. The news cycle moved on, as it always does, but the scars remained, small and invisible, until someone said a phrase like, "Family should stick together," and I'd feel my pulse spike. Therapy helped. Work helped. So did quiet. Sometimes, in those quiet moments, I wondered if Grandma had foreseen any of this. She'd been meticulous, practical. Maybe she'd known the people she raised weren't ready for the responsibility she built. Maybe that was why she wrote "read everything before you sign in," looping cursive at the bottom of her recipe cards, a lesson disguised as homemaking. One afternoon, nearly 3 years after the trial, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten note, Grandma's handwriting, unmistakable. The date at the top was 1 week before she died. It said, "If this ever reaches court, know that I trusted you to find the truth. Family can be the greatest blessing or the greatest test. Choose truth. It will hurt less in the end." There was no signature, just her initials, EQ, and a small drawing of a heart. I showed it to Vivian that night. She ran her thumb along the edge and smiled through tears. "She really did know," she whispered. We framed it, hung it on the office wall of the foundation. By the 4th year, my life had gone quiet enough that I could breathe without checking the shadows. I started dating someone, Eli, a software engineer who didn't care about the headlines or the last name I used to have. The first time I told him the story, he didn't look away. He just said, "You did what you had to do." Some nights, I still woke up with courtroom echoes in my head, my father's voice, my mother's cry when the verdict was read, but the noise faded faster each time. On my 30th birthday, Vivian and Eli took me to dinner. No bars, no surprises, just candles, laughter, peace. I made a toast. "To the family you choose," I said, "and the ones you forgive quietly, even when they'll never say sorry." Vivian smiled across the table. "You sound like her," she said. "Who?" "Mom, our mom." I looked at her for a long moment. Then maybe we're doing something right. After dessert, we walked by the river. The wind was soft, carrying the smell of rain and lilacs. For the first time, I didn't think about the money, the trial, or the name I'd left behind. I just thought about Grandma's note and the way truth, once revealed, doesn't need to shout. It just settles. Before heading home, I stopped by the memorial park where we'd buried her ashes. I knelt, placed a single daisy on the plaque, and whispered, "It's finished now. Everything's in the right hands." A gust of wind lifted the petals, scattering them toward the water. When I got home, Eli was already asleep. I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker, and realized that this quiet, this stillness, was what victory really felt like. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace that doesn't need permission. I picked up the framed recipe card from my desk. Read everything before you start. It wasn't just advice about cooking or contracts, it was about people, about life. I turned off the light. For the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of signatures.